The auto-flight system approach modes can be used for flight director only or single and dual channel autopilot approaches, and can also control automatic landings. The go-around modes show flight director command bars and can supply commands to the autopilot. To fly a dual autopilot approach, you must arm the auto-flight system for approach. Verify the inbound course is set on the MCP and the localizer frequency is tuned on the navigation radios. When the airplane is on a localizer intercept heading, push the approach switch. Verify that the approach mode is armed with the FMA. The pitch field shows glide slope and the roll field shows Vorlok in small white letters. Next, push command on the second autopilot. This arms the second autopilot but does not engage it. Vorlok changes from armed to active on the FMA after localizer capture. After localizer capture, set the heading to match the inbound course. The autoflight status field annunciation shows single channel. This tells you that only one autopilot is engaged. At glide slope capture, glide slope changes from an armed to an active mode. The TMD displays go around as the active N1 thrust limit, and you set the missed approach altitude on the MCP. At glide slope capture, the light in the approach switch goes dark. You cannot disengage the approach mode with the second push of the approach switch. To leave the approach mode after localizer and glide slope capture, you must push toga or disengage the autopilot and turn off the flight directors or retune a VHF navigation receiver. After glide slope and localizer capture, the second autopilot engages when the airplane is below 1,500 feet radio altitude. The single-channel annunciation is removed, and flare armed is annunciated in the pitch field. Now the autopilot go-around mode is also armed, but is not annunciated. For a dual autopilot approach, you must select the second autopilot above 800 feet radio altitude. Below 800 feet radio altitude, you cannot engage the second autopilot. At 400 feet radio altitude, the autopilots automatically add an additional amount of stabilizer nose-up trim. If the autopilots disengage after this occurs, you must hold forward control pressure on the control wheel until you can manually remove the trim. If flare is not armed by 350 feet radio altitude, the autopilots automatically disengage. The flare maneuver starts at 50 feet radio altitude. The autopilot trims the airplane in the flare, the FMA pitch field changes to flare, and the flight director command bars are removed. The autothrottle reduces thrust to idle below 30 feet radio altitude, and the FMA shows retard. The autothrottle automatically disengages after touchdown, but you must manually disengage the autopilot. This shows the steps for a dual autopilot approach. A single autopilot approach is the same as the dual autopilot approach, but the second autopilot is not engaged after approach is selected. The single-channel annunciation shows for the full approach. Flare is not annunciated, and the flare and automatic touchdown capability are not available. And an autopilot go-around is not available. With a single-channel autopilot approach, you must flare and land manually. The autopilot must be disconnected before you reach 50 feet radio altitude. Go-around mode is engaged when you push one of the two toga switches on the thrust levers. Two autopilots must be engaged for an autopilot go-around. If one autopilot is engaged, only the flight director go-around is available. When you push a toga switch for an autopilot go-around, the autothrottle engages in go-around. The thrust increases to a reduced go-around N1 that produces 1,000 to 2,000 feet per minute rate of climb. The pitch mode engages in toga, and a target pitch of 15 degrees is commanded until the climb rate is between 1,000 and 2,000 feet per minute. At the target climb rate, the autopilot changes pitch to hold the maneuvering speed for the set flap position. The roll command holds the ground track. The FMA is blank in the roll field. The IAS Mach window is blank, and the airspeed cursor shows the maneuvering speed for the current flap position. As you retract the flaps, the airspeed cursor moves to the maneuvering speed for the new flap position. The airplane will automatically accelerate to the new target speed as the flaps are retracted. After the autothrottle is at the reduced go-around thrust, a second push of the toga switch increases the thrust to the full go-around thrust. The autopilot increases the pitch to hold the maneuvering speed for the set flap position. Above 400 feet radio altitude, you can engage a roll mode. Here, engage heading select. If you keep the autoflight system in go-around mode and you are close to the missed approach altitude, the autopilot changes to altitude acquire and captures the missed approach altitude. When the go-around mode disengages, the last autopilot engaged in command also disengages and the MCP speed window is no longer blank. The MCP speed window shows the target speed that was active when the autopilot exited the go-around mode. The flight director go-around can be used on single autopilot approaches, on dual autopilot approaches before flare is armed, and on a manual approach. You can use the flight director go-around when you are below 2,000 feet radio altitude. If you start a go-around when the flight directors are off, the command bar will automatically pop up. To engage the flight director go-around, push a toga switch. Unless flare is armed on a dual autopilot approach, all autopilots disengage when you push toga. The flight director command bars show target pitch and roll attitudes to maintain track and flap maneuvering speed, but the pilot must control pitch and roll. If you engage in autopilot during a flight director go-around, the pitch mode engages in level change and the roll mode engages in heading select, unless a different roll mode was engaged first.